The villa gift, when family expectations clash with reality. The wedding gift. Sophia Miller had always prided herself on her ability to build a life of success. As a seasoned businesswoman, she had climbed the ranks of a competitive industry and now sat comfortably at the top. Yet, despite her career achievements, there was one thing that meant more to her than any business deal or professional accolade: her daughter, Lily. Sophia had poured her heart into raising Lily as a single mother after her divorce, and every decision she made was for her daughter's happiness. Now that Lily was about to marry Ryan Matthews, Sophia wanted to give her the greatest gift she could imagine: a fresh start, a home. It had been Sophia's dream for Lily to have a beautiful life with a partner who truly appreciated her, and with Ryan, she believed Lily had found that. Ryan, on the surface, seemed like the perfect match for her daughter. He was charming, well-spoken, and respectful. Everything a mother could wish for in a son-in-law. But as Lily's wedding day drew near, Sophia's excitement began to mix with a tinge of anxiety. There were things she didn't fully understand about Ryan's background, and the more she thought about it, the more she realized how little she actually knew about his family. But she wasn't worried. Lily was in love, and that was enough. Sophia knew Lily and Ryan's relationship was something special, and she wanted to make sure it started off right. So she made a bold decision, a gesture that she hoped would show just how much she supported her daughter's future. She gifted Lily a villa, a beautiful, fully renovated home in the quiet suburbs of Boston, with sprawling gardens and intricate custom-made details that would make anyone's heart skip a beat. The house had been a long-time project, one that Sophia had envisioned as a sanctuary for herself when she eventually retired. But now, it had a new purpose: to be the foundation for Lily's new chapter. It was more than just a wedding gift. It was a place to create memories, to build a family, to live without the weight of past struggles. The perfect place for Lily and Ryan to start their life together. The day the renovations were completed, Sophia's heart swelled with pride. She could already imagine the joy Lily would feel when she walked into her new home for the first time. The house was not just a gift. It was a testament to the love and dedication Sophia had for her daughter, a symbol of the future they could build together. But things didn't go as planned. Lily, radiant in her wedding dress, stood at the threshold of her new home, her heart full of excitement. Sophia had always worked so hard for everything they had, and now Lily was about to marry Ryan, and it felt like a dream come true. Everything was falling into place. Her mother's support meant the world to her, and the house, this beautiful house, was the cherry on top. But as Lily took her first step inside, her joy faltered. She had heard voices, loud voices, unfamiliar and harsh. As she walked into the foyer, the sight that greeted her was nothing like she had imagined. Standing there in the entrance of her brand new home was Ryan's mother, Karen, looking around with a critical eye. She was accompanied by Ryan's father, David, who stood silently, arms crossed, surveying the space. And there too was Ryan's older brother, Michael, casually walking around with an air of ownership, as if this house was already theirs. Lily froze. "Ryan, what's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Ryan, who had been talking to his parents at the time, turned to face Lily. He smiled, but there was something in his eyes that made her uneasy. "It's just my family," he said casually. "They're here to see the house. It's a big occasion, after all." Before Lily could respond, Karen spoke, her voice dripping with entitlement. "Well, we'll take the master bedroom, of course. It's only fitting, don't you think?" She looked round as if inspecting the place, clearly unimpressed with what was there. "And we'll need to make a few changes. The furniture is too modern for my taste, don't you think?" Lily stood there, stunned. She turned to Ryan, but before she could say anything, Karen continued. "Now, about the other rooms. David, Michael, and I will sort out where we'll stay. Don't worry, we'll make it work." Lily's mouth went dry, and she glanced at Sophia, who had been quietly observing the exchange. She saw her mother's face tighten as the words sank in. This was not what Sophia had intended at all. This wasn't a gift for Lily and Ryan to share. It was turning into an intrusion. Sophia took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. This was her daughter's big day, and she didn't want to ruin it with a confrontation, but she could feel the fury simmering beneath the surface. It was clear now that the Matthews family had no intention of being gracious guests in this new home. They saw it as theirs, as if they were entitled to it because of their son's marriage to Lily. They had moved in without any consideration for Lily's feelings or the fact that this home was supposed to be hers, a fresh start. Sophia had worked hard for everything she had, and she was determined that Lily wouldn't have to endure the same kind of oppressive behavior she had from her own family in the past. But as she stood there, Watching Lily's discomfort and Ryan's silence, she realized that this was going to be a much bigger problem than she had anticipated. As the evening wore on, the tension only increased. Karen continued to make demands, while David and Michael offered nothing more than vague remarks about how the house would work better, with a few adjustments. Ryan, still silent, looked to his parents for guidance, unwilling to take a stand, or even acknowledge that anything was wrong. Lily, struggling to understand how things had spiraled so quickly, began to realize that the man she was about to marry was not the person she thought he was. This wasn't about love. This was about control, power, and manipulation. The man she had envisioned spending her life with had chosen to stay silent in the face of his family's overwhelming behavior. The night ended with Lily retreating to the guest room, her heart heavy with disappointment. She had hoped for so much more. She had imagined starting her new life with Ryan in a home filled with love and joy. But instead, she felt trapped in a situation where her voice was silenced, where her hopes for a happy marriage seemed to slip further away with every passing hour. Sophia stayed up late that night, staring at the house she had so lovingly gifted to her daughter, wondering how it had all gone so wrong. She had wanted to create a safe space for Lily, a place where she could grow into the woman she was meant to be. But now, she was left wondering if the house had become a prison. As the days passed, the situation only grew worse. The Matthews family's entitlement grew bolder, and Lily's frustrations reached a breaking point. Her dream of a peaceful, happy marriage was quickly crumbling before her eyes. She had no idea how she was going to handle it, and she was no longer sure if Ryan was the man she had fallen in love with. Sophia, watching her daughter's pain, knew something had to change. But what could she do when the problem wasn't just the house? It was the man Lily was about to marry. The unwelcome invasion. The sun had barely set that evening when the tension in the air felt heavier than ever. Sophia had barely managed to hide the frustration and disbelief on her face, but it was evident to everyone that something was amiss. The Matthews family, especially Karen, had made it clear that they didn't just want to be guests in Lily and Ryan's new home. No, they intended to take full control of it. The villa Sophia had so carefully chosen for Lily's fresh start had already begun to feel like it no longer belonged to them. Lily sat in the living room, trying to make sense of what had happened. Her excitement about her new life, her new home, and the wedding had quickly dissolved into confusion and frustration. She couldn't understand how everything had unraveled so fast. She had expected a home filled with joy, with family and love. But what she had gotten instead was an overwhelming sense of being an outsider in her own life. Karen Matthews, Ryan's mother, had made herself at home in a way that left Lily feeling more like an intruder in her own space. The day after the wedding, Karen had practically moved into the master bedroom without asking for permission, as if it were her right. No discussion, no negotiation, just a simple imperious command. "I'll take the master bedroom. It's the best room in the house after all, and you can handle the rest." Lily had been speechless. Was this really happening? The moment Karen took control of the master bedroom, she began her long list of demands. She didn't even bother to try and conceal her displeasure with the way the house had been designed. "This house is so dark. Do you have any idea how oppressive it feels in here?" she complained, her sharp voice cutting through the air. "Oh, what kind of modern home doesn't have enough light? And these cabinets, ugh, they look like something out of a second-hand store. We'll need to replace them." Lily's hands shook, her fingers gripping the armrest of the chair as she struggled to keep her composure. It wasn't just the house, it was the complete lack of respect for her home, for her future. She had given up so much to make this marriage work, to make Ryan happy, and this was how they were repaid. Sophia, who had always been the rock in their family, watched her daughter's face fall as she tried to process Karen's criticism. It hurt her deeply to see Lily this way. She had worked so hard to create a beautiful life for her daughter, only for it to be marred by Ryan's family's entitlement. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to speak up, at least not yet. She didn't want to make things worse for Lily, who was already caught in the middle, but Sophia's patience was wearing thin. The next few days were filled with more and more complaints from Karen. "The kitchen is so small. How can you cook here?" she would exclaim, eyes wide with disbelief. "Lily, darling, do you have any idea how much time we'll be spending here? This house should be able to accommodate everyone in our family." As if the villa were some sort of shared property, Karen's sense of entitlement seemed to know no bounds. She wanted to rearrange the furniture, replace all the decor, and even change the layout of the garden. When Lily expressed discomfort, Karen's response was always the same. "It's for your own good, dear. This house is too big for just the two of you. We're here to help make it a real home. After all, you wouldn't want to feel lonely, would you?" Lily's heart ached. She had envisioned a life with Ryan in this home, a life that was theirs to build. But instead, she felt like she had been pushed to the sidelines. Everything she had hoped for was slipping away. The dream of a marriage filled with love and respect had started to feel like a distant memory. Ryan, meanwhile, continued to act as if everything was fine. He did nothing to stand up to his mother. Not once did he speak up to defend Lily. It was as if he had chosen sides, his family over his bride. Sophia noticed the growing rift between Lily and Ryan. It was subtle at first, Lily's quiet withdrawal from Ryan's family, her reluctance to speak up when they demanded more space, more accommodations. But soon, it became clear. She was pulling away from him, no longer the eager, hopeful woman she had been before the wedding. She was now a shadow of herself, her spirit crushed under the weight of her own family's expectations and Ryan's lack of action. One afternoon, after another round of complaints about the house, Sophia had had enough. "Lily," she said softly, "you don't have to do this. This house, this home, is for you, not for them." Lily looked up at her mother, her eyes red from a day spent holding back tears. "I don't know what to do, Mom. I can't fight them. But I also can't stand this. This isn't what I imagined. This isn't love." Sophia held her daughter's gaze, feeling a deep sorrow for the pain she was enduring. "You don't have to fight them. You just need to stand your ground. You need to let them know that this is your home, not theirs." Lily nodded slowly, but it was clear that a storm was brewing inside her. The longer she allowed her future to be dictated by Ryan's family, the more her sense of self seemed to erode. Later that evening, after another heated exchange with Karen about the house, Lily reached her breaking point. She couldn't take it anymore. The constant barrage of criticism, the undermining of her choices, and the absence of support from Ryan. It had all become too much. She turned to Ryan, her voice trembling but firm. "Ryan, this isn't working. You need to tell your family to leave." Ryan's face twisted with confusion. "What are you talking about? They're just trying to help. They want to make sure we have everything we need." "No, Ryan," Lily said, her voice growing louder. "They're taking over. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to be treated like I'm not important. This house, our life, our marriage, it's not about them. It's about us. And if you can't see that, then maybe we need to talk about where this is going." Ryan's eyes widened in shock, but he didn't respond. He had always believed that everything was going fine. His family had always been a part of his life, and he expected them to be part of his marriage too. But this was different. Lily's words had struck him harder than he'd realized. Sophia, watching the scene unfold, knew this was the moment when things could either change or fall apart. She couldn't allow her daughter to live in a relationship that didn't respect her. Lily had given up so much, and if Ryan couldn't stand up for her now, then there would be nothing left to save. As Lily's frustration grew, so did her sense of determination. She was no longer willing to be a bystander in her own life. The villa was meant to be a gift, a symbol of a fresh start, but it had become a battleground between two worlds, a place where she was no longer in control. And as the days passed, one thing became clear. Lily wasn't just fighting for her house, she was fighting for her future, the breaking point. The days had turned into weeks, but the tension in the house only grew heavier. It wasn't just the constant demands of Ryan's family, or Karen's ongoing criticisms. It was the realization that Lily was now living in a house that no longer felt like home. What was supposed to be the beginning of a beautiful life with Ryan was slowly being overtaken by his family's dominance, and Lily felt more like a visitor in her own life. Sophia watched her daughter's distress with increasing worry. She had always known that marriage could bring challenges, but this was something else. It wasn't just about two families coming together, it was about respect, boundaries, and the fundamental values that made a relationship work. And right now, Lily's marriage didn't seem to have any of that. Karen Matthews had taken control of the villa in ways that could only be described as a full invasion. Not only had she appropriated the master bedroom, but she had also begun to dictate the way the household was run. From the kitchen to the living room, she would give instructions on where to place things, what color the curtains should be, and even how Lily should decorate the rooms. "This space needs more light," Karen declared one day, standing in the middle of the living room, hands on her hips. "And this rug is too dark, it's just depressing." Lily, standing nearby, clenched her fists at her sides, trying her best to keep her composure. This was her home, the house that Sophia had gifted her for her new life with Ryan. But instead of feeling like a space for new memories, it was turning into a battleground where her dignity and her dreams were being trampled upon. At every corner, there was a new demand, a new criticism. The tension was palpable. Lily had hoped that Ryan, her new husband, would be her ally in this, but instead he had become more of a bystander. When she confronted him about his family's behavior, Ryan merely brushed it off, telling her, "It's just my mom. You know how she is. She doesn't mean any harm." But that wasn't the point. It wasn't about whether Karen meant harm. It was about the complete lack of respect for Lily's wishes, for their new life together. One evening, as Karen again made a rude comment about the kitchen's layout, Lily finally reached her breaking point. She couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't just about the house. It was about how Ryan and his family were treating her like an outsider in the very life she had tried so hard to build. With a cold, steady voice, Lily turned to Ryan, her gaze unwavering. "Ryan, this needs to stop." Ryan, who had been on his phone, looked up at her with confusion. "What do you mean, Lily?" "Your family," she said, her voice rising with each word. "They can't keep doing this. They can't keep acting like they own everything. This house, this home, was a gift from my mother. It's mine, and it's supposed to be ours, not theirs." Ryan's face fell, and he opened his mouth, but no words came out. He couldn't even look her in the eye. His silence was all Lily needed to know. He wasn't ready to stand up to his family. Not for her. "You need to choose, Ryan," Lily continued, her heart pounding. "You need to choose between me and them. I can't live like this. I can't keep pretending everything's fine when you let your family walk all over me." The words hit like a slap, reverberating through the room. For a moment, neither of them moved. Ryan seemed frozen, his face pale, his eyes wide with uncertainty. Sophia, who had been quietly observing from the hallway, stepped into the living room, her presence commanding attention. She saw the anguish in Lily's eyes, and her heart ached for her daughter. "Lily's right," Sophia said softly, but with firmness in her voice. "This is your new life, Ryan. Your family is not the center of it anymore. If you can't support Lily, then this marriage won't work." Ryan turned to his mother, as if silently asking for support, but Karen merely shrugged, a cold smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Lily's just overreacting," she said dismissively. "This house was a gift. Of course we're all going to be here helping out. She doesn't understand how much we need to be involved." "Enough," Lily snapped, her voice cracking with frustration. "I don't need you or anyone else helping out. I need respect. I need a partner, not a puppet to his family's whims." Ryan's face contorted, torn between his wife and his mother. He didn't know how to choose. "Lily, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be." But it was already hard. The pain had been building for weeks, the cracks in their relationship now painfully visible. This wasn't just about a house or a wedding gift. It was about Lily's voice being stifled, her boundaries ignored, and her marriage to Ryan becoming more about appeasing his family than building a life together. Sophia watched Lily with deep sorrow, knowing that her daughter was at the precipice of something much bigger than a simple disagreement. This was a test of strength, of self-respect, and of the life she would choose for herself. But she knew one thing for sure. Lily couldn't keep living in a marriage where she had to choose between her husband and her dignity. Lily took a deep breath and looked at Ryan, her voice steady but heavy with finality. "I've had enough. You've made your choice, and so have I." Ryan's face fell, and for the first time, Lily saw the fear in his eyes. But it was too late for apologies now. The moment of truth had come, and there was no going back. The tension in the house was thick, but for the first time in weeks, Lily felt something different, a sense of clarity. She didn't need Ryan's family to define her, and she didn't need a marriage that demanded she sacrifice herself for others. She was done playing the part of the submissive wife. It was time for her to take back control. The final ultimatum. Lily stood by the window, staring out at the sprawling backyard of the villa that was supposed to mark the beginning of her married life. The house, once a symbol of hope, was now a battleground where every corner seemed to echo the clash between her desires and the overwhelming presence of Ryan's family. She could hear the faint sounds of Karen's voice floating in from the kitchen, dictating yet another minor change to the decor. Each word made Lily's skin crawl, but this time it didn't sting as much. This time she was done. The past few weeks had felt like a slow suffocation, her sense of self eroding bit by bit as Ryan's family took over every aspect of her life. She had tried desperately to make things work, to maintain peace for the sake of her marriage, but at what cost? The more she compromised, the more she lost herself, and with every passing day, she felt the walls of the villa close in on her. Lily turned away from the window, her face set in determination. She knew that she couldn't keep living like this. She had been patient. She had tried to navigate the complexities of a blended family. She had even tried to tolerate Karen's incessant need to control everything. But this was no longer just about a family dynamic. This was about her self-respect. It was about understanding that love, no matter how deep, could not be built on the foundation of one person constantly sacrificing for the other's comfort. Lily knew that confrontation was inevitable. She had made the decision, the ultimatum was coming, and she had to say it. She had to make Ryan understand that this wasn't about money or property or the house her mother had gifted them. It was about respect, boundaries, and a future together, one that could only exist if they both stood on equal ground. Later that afternoon, after another round of passive-aggressive comments from Karen about the garden arrangements, Lily finally called Ryan into their living room. The air in the room was thick with anticipation. This was it. She had to lay it all out on the table. Ryan walked in, his usual relaxed demeanor now tinged with anxiety. He could tell something was different about her. Lily wasn't fidgeting. She wasn't waiting for him to speak first. She wasn't putting on her usual smile and pretending that everything would be okay. Lily's voice was steady, but the weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Ryan, we need to talk. Ryan looked at her with concern. Lily, what's going on? You've been quiet all day. She took a deep breath, gathering all the strength she could. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's not. Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but she held up her hand, stopping him. No, you need to listen. I've been silent long enough, but I won't be silent anymore. This house, this whole situation, it's not working for me. Ryan's brow furrowed, his eyes scanning her face for some sign of what was happening. What do you mean? I don't understand. I can't live here, Lily continued, her voice unwavering. I can't keep living in a house that was meant to be a gift to us, to our marriage, and watch it become a place where your family walks all over me. I've tried to be respectful. I've tried to compromise, but your family keeps overstepping, and you've done nothing to stop it. Ryan stood there stunned, his hands at his sides, unsure of how to respond. Lily, she interrupted. I'm not doing this for me anymore. I'm doing it for us. I need you to choose, Ryan. You need to choose between me and your family. The words hung in the air like an explosion waiting to happen. The weight of the ultimatum, the reality of the decision hung between them. Ryan's face paled, and for the first time, Lily saw the fear in his eyes, the fear of losing her. But what hurt more was the way he hesitated, the way he didn't answer immediately. I know it's hard, Lily continued, her voice softer now, but firm. But I can't be in a relationship where I'm not seen, where I'm not heard, where I'm not respected. You have to understand that this isn't just about your mom. This is about us, our life, and our future. I want to build something real with you, but I can't do it if your family gets to decide everything for us. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. Lily, this isn't easy. You know how much I love you, but my family, they don't understand. I can't just shut them out. Lily closed her eyes, taking a moment to collect herself before speaking. She had expected this response. She had known it wouldn't be easy, but this was the moment of truth. Then I guess that's your answer, she said quietly. If you can't choose me over them, then I can't keep living like this. I can't keep sacrificing my happiness for your family's comfort. Ryan stopped pacing, his back to her. He stood there frozen, caught between his love for her and his loyalty to his family. It wasn't just about the house. It wasn't even about Karen or Michael or David. It was about something deeper, the fear of losing Lily, the fear of facing the truth that his family was not the anchor he thought they were. And as the silence stretched on, Lily's heart broke a little more. I need an answer, Ryan, she said, her voice now barely above a whisper. Do you want to be with me, or do you want to keep living this way? Ryan stood there for what felt like an eternity. He knew Lily was right. She was asking for something simple. Respect. She was asking for the kind of relationship where both people had equal say, where both people felt valued. But the truth was, Ryan wasn't sure he was ready to make that choice. He wasn't sure he could let go of the family dynamic he had known all his life. Finally, he turned to face her. I need time, he said softly. This isn't something I can just decide on the spot. And Lily nodded, her heart heavy but resolute. I understand, but don't take too long. And with that, she left the room, leaving Ryan standing alone in the villa that was meant to be their home. The silence was deafening, a reflection of the space that had grown between them. The decision to stand up. The weight of the ultimatum that Lily had given him lingered in Ryan's mind, gnawing at him, pushing him to make a decision he had long been avoiding. It had been a few days since their confrontation, and every moment had been filled with growing tension. The walls of the villa, once a symbol of their new life together, now felt like a prison, suffocating him with expectations and the lingering pressure of his family's demands. Ryan loved Lily. He truly did. But the realization was dawning on him that love alone was not enough to sustain a marriage. Love needed respect, it needed boundaries, it needed independence. The silence between him and Lily had been deafening, but it was also necessary. They both needed space not to cool down, but to think, deeply think, about what kind of future they wanted together. Ryan had always been caught in the push and pull of his family's influence, torn between the love he had for Lily and the loyalty he felt to the family that raised him. But now, he had to choose. He couldn't keep straddling both worlds. The sound of his phone vibrating on the table broke his thoughts. It was his mother, Karen. He hesitated, then answered the call. "Ryan, where are you?" Her voice was as cold as ever, tinged with impatience. "You need to come over here. We need to talk about the house." Ryan's jaw tightened. He had been avoiding his family, unwilling to have the same draining discussions about his marriage. But this time, he knew it was inevitable. He couldn't run forever. This time, he needed to confront them. "I'm not coming over, Mom," Ryan said, his voice firm, though it shook with the weight of his decision. "We need to talk, all of us, in the villa." The tension was palpable when Ryan arrived at his family's house later that day. His mother, Karen, sat in her usual spot in the living room, her posture rigid, her gaze intense. David, his father, was sitting on the armchair flipping through the newspaper, seemingly disinterested but watching every move his son made. Michael, his older brother, stood by the window, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips as if he already knew what was coming. Ryan took a deep breath before speaking, his voice steady, but filled with the resolve he had finally found. "I need to talk to you all," he began, locking eyes with each family member. "I've made a decision." Karen's eyes narrowed. "What kind of decision?" she asked sharply. "If you're thinking of giving up on Lily, we're here to help you through it. You don't need to make hasty choices." Ryan shook his head. "This isn't about giving up on Lily. This is about standing up for her and for us." His father finally looked up from his paper, his tone low and skeptical. "What are you talking about, son?" Ryan swallowed, gathering the courage to speak his truth. "Lily and I are married. The villa was meant to be our home, but your behavior, Mom, Michael, how you've treated her and how you've treated me. It's not okay. I can't keep letting you dictate our lives. I love you all, but I'm not going to let this continue. Lily is my wife, and she deserves respect." And a tense silence fell over the room. Karen's face turned crimson with anger. "How dare you speak to us like that, Ryan? This house was a gift from your parents-in-law. It's not about respect, it's about family. You're forgetting your roots, forgetting where you came from." Ryan stepped closer to his mother, his voice rising. "I haven't forgotten anything, but I have to put my wife first. She's not some guest in this house, she's my partner, and I won't let you treat her like this anymore." Karen's face twisted in disbelief. "You can't be serious. You think you can just shut us out? You're going to choose her over your own flesh and blood." I'm choosing our marriage, Ryan replied firmly. "And if that means setting boundaries with all of you, then that's what I'll do." Michael scoffed, stepping forward. "You're pathetic. You've let her turn you into a puppet, Ryan. You used to have a backbone. But I guess that's all gone now. You can't even stand up to your own wife. What a joke." Ryan's hands clenched at his sides, but he didn't back down. "I'm standing up for what's right. I'm standing up for my marriage, for Lily, for the future we're building together." Karen's eyes flicked between Ryan and Michael, frustration and fury warring in her gaze. She took a deep breath before speaking again, her voice, "Fine. If you want to choose her, then you choose her. But don't come running back to us when things fall apart. You won't have us to fall back on." Ryan's heart pounded, but he stood his ground. "I don't need to run back to anyone. I'm not going to let this tear us apart." The conversation had been brutal, but it was necessary. For the first time, Ryan felt like he was taking control of his life. He had made the choice, but the hardest part was still ahead, confronting Lily and telling her that he was ready to stand by her, fully, without the weight of his family's expectations hanging over them. And as he drove back to the villa, his mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. He had never imagined it would come to this, but now, more than ever, he realized that the life he wanted with Lily couldn't exist under the shadow of his family's dominance. The villa, the home that was meant to mark the beginning of their new life together, would only become a prison if they didn't face the truth. When Ryan walked into the villa, the place that had once been filled with excitement and anticipation now felt cold and unfamiliar. Lily was sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. She had been waiting for him, hoping that he would come to his senses, but the silence between them had stretched long enough. They both knew that something had to change. "I've talked to them," Ryan said, his voice clear but resolute. I've told them they can't treat you like this anymore. They need to respect us, our marriage, and if they can't, they have to go." Lily looked up at him, a mixture of relief and skepticism in her eyes. She had heard the words, but it was the sincerity in his voice that reassured her. This was the Ryan she had been waiting for, the one who would fight for her, for them. But there was still something she needed to say, something that had been weighing on her heart for weeks. "Ryan, I don't want to keep living like this either. I don't want to be constantly torn between you and your family. I've spent so much time trying to make peace, trying to be the good daughter-in-law, trying to keep everything together. But I've lost myself in the process. I can't do it anymore. I need you to understand that this isn't just about your family. This is about us. I need to know that we can have our own life, our own space, without anyone else dictating it." Ryan nodded slowly, his heart heavy with the understanding of what she was saying. "I understand, Lily, and I'm not going to let them control our lives anymore. I'm standing with you, I promise." For the first time in weeks, Lily felt a sense of peace settle over her. The weight that had been crushing her heart was lifting little by little. She realized that true love wasn't just about staying silent and enduring. It was about standing up for what was right, for what she deserved. Ryan had made his decision, and she was ready to move forward, together, finding independence. Ryan and Lily stood in the doorway of their villa, the place that was once a symbol of compromise and family expectations, now feeling like a sanctuary. It had been weeks since the confrontation with Ryan's family, and while the storm had momentarily settled, the quietness left behind was still filled with uncertainty. They had made the choice to move forward, to start over, just the two of them. However, even though they were no longer under the watchful eye of Ryan's overbearing family, their lives were far from simple. The road to rebuilding was littered with challenges that tested their bond and their resolve. The pressure to conform to the expectations of their respective families, to the unwritten rules of society remain. Yet there was a quiet determination in both of them, an understanding that their happiness, their future would only be shaped by their decisions. Lily sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee warming her hands. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft glow through the windows. The villa was peaceful in the early morning stillness, but inside her heart a storm was brewing. She had spent so much of her life trying to please others, her mother, her father, Ryan's family. She had lived her life in the shadow of everyone else's desires and expectations. But now, as she looked at the empty spaces in the villa, the only thing she knew for sure was that she needed to be true to herself. She set her coffee down and walked over to the window, looking out at the neighborhood that just weeks ago had felt foreign to her. The grand house was supposed to be a symbol of their new beginning, yet it had become a battleground for control. Now, with Ryan by her side, she was beginning to see it differently. This was their space, their life, and no one could take that away from them. The thought of her own family, especially her mother, who had always been so supportive yet controlling, weighed heavily on her. She had grown up under the protective wings of a mother who always wanted what was best for her. But what did that actually mean? Was it to please her parents, or was it about finding her own voice, even if it meant making hard choices? Ryan sat across from Lily, his eyes thoughtful as he watched her wrestle with her inner conflict. He understood all too well what she was going through. He had spent 2 years allowing his family to dictate his life, but his decisions now were his own. He had learned the importance of standing up for his family, of setting boundaries, but that didn't mean it was easy. He had always believed that pleasing his parents, especially his mother, was the right thing to do. He'd lived under her thumb for so long that it felt impossible to break free. But the look on Lily's face, the strength in her voice when she stood up for herself, had made him realize that his love for her wasn't just about the moments of passion or the fleeting happiness. It was about standing with her in the hardest moments when no one else would. "What's on your mind?" Ryan's voice broke through Lily's thoughts. Lily turned to him, her eyes searching his face. She had never seen him like this before, so grounded, so decisive. The change in him was palpable, and it gave her hope that they could create something real, something lasting. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice steady. "I've been thinking that maybe I've spent too much of my life trying to make everyone happy, trying to make everyone proud, but I don't know what I want for myself. Not yet." Ryan's face softened as he reached for her hand, gently squeezing it. "You don't have to have everything figured out right now, Lily. I'm here with you. We'll figure it out together." Lily's heart swelled with affection, but there was still something in the back of her mind. The nagging feeling that she wasn't enough, that maybe, in the eyes of her parents and the world, she would always be the daughter trying to please others. She had spent so much of her life trying to live up to their expectations, but she had never stopped to ask herself what she truly wanted. Ryan, too, had his own realizations. The fight with his family, though painful, had opened his eyes to the reality of what he needed to do. He had always loved his family, but their control over him, over his choices, had suffocated him for years. He had been living in a space where his identity had been tied to their approval. No more. Now, standing side by side with Lily, he had learned that love wasn't about giving in or compromising your values for the sake of peace. Love was about respect. Respect for each other's space, for each other's desires, for each other's right to exist independently. He was learning to set boundaries with his family, to say no when they crossed a line, and to finally, for the first time in his life, prioritize his relationship over their demands. But their newfound freedom didn't come without difficulties. The world outside the villa, the judgments from society, from their families, were constant reminders that they didn't fit into the mold everyone expected them to. Lily still felt the weight of her mother's influence, and Ryan was beginning to realize just how much his mother's voice had shaped his identity. Even though they had made the decision to stand firm, the old patterns were hard to break. "I feel like people are still judging us," Lily admitted one night as they sat on the couch, the quiet hum of the city outside their window. "Like we're not allowed to have our own space, our own rules. It feels like the whole world is watching, waiting for us to fail." Ryan leaned in, placing his hand on hers. "Let them watch. Let them talk. We know who we are, and we know what we want. The rest doesn't matter." Lily smiled, squeezing his hand. "I just want us to be happy. To live without the weight of expectations." Ryan smiled back, his heart swelling with pride. "We will be. Together." And so, step by step, they began to build their life, not around the expectations of others, but around their own desires and dreams. They worked together to create a home that was theirs alone. One where they could escape the pressures of the outside world and just be themselves. There was no more pretending, no more compromises that left them feeling empty. Lily had learned to embrace her independence, to stand tall and face the world on her terms. She no longer needed validation from her mother, from Ryan's family, or from anyone else. She had learned that true happiness didn't come from pleasing others, but from being true to herself, from listening to her own heart, and from walking beside Ryan as an equal partner. Ryan Aton, too, had come a long way. He had stopped being the obedient son, the man who tried to meet everyone else's expectations, and had begun to stand on his own 2 feet. The road wasn't easy, but with Lily by his side, he knew that anything was possible. Together, they were finding their independence, their voice, and their happiness. And for the first time, they truly felt free, healing, and forgiveness. It had been several months since Lily and Ryan had decided to carve out a life of their own, free from the shadows of their family's expectations. The tension that once hung in the air between them was now slowly starting to lift, but healing would take time. There were still moments of doubt, moments when they questioned whether they had made the right choice in severing ties with their families. But both Lily and Ryan had come to understand something important. Forgiveness was a long road, and it began with accepting that some things were beyond their control. Lily sat in the cozy corner of their living room, a mug of herbal tea warming her hands. The soft glow of the evening sun filtered through the curtains, casting a calm light over the room. She had made great strides in the last few months, but there was still a lingering heaviness in her chest. The pain from the past, especially the way her family and Ryan's family had treated her, had left scars that weren't easily healed. She had spent years trying to be everything to everyone, and in doing so she had lost sight of who she was. Now she was learning how to rebuild that sense of self piece by piece. The journey had not been easy. In the beginning, she struggled with anger toward her mother for pushing her into a life she didn't want, anger toward Ryan's family for disrespecting her, and even anger toward herself for allowing it all to happen. But through therapy and personal reflection, she had learned that anger was a burden she didn't need to carry. Holding onto it only continued the cycle of pain. So she began to let go, one day at a time. Ryan had been on a similar journey. He sat across from Lily, watching her with a quiet intensity. The progress she had made, the strength she had shown, was inspiring to him. But Ryan was still grappling with his own demons. He knew that he had let his family take control of his life for too long. He had let their expectations dictate his choices, and in doing so, he had hurt the woman he loved. Every time he thought about the things his family had said and done, he felt a pang of guilt. But with each passing day, he was learning to forgive himself. He had spoken to a counselor, trying to understand the roots of his own behavior. Why had he allowed his family to bully him into submission? Why hadn't he defended Lily sooner? Through those conversations, Ryan realized that his fear of disappointing his parents had paralyzed him. He had never learned how to stand up for what he wanted, for what was right. But now, that was changing. "Lily," Ryan began, his voice low but steady. "I need to say something. I know I've made mistakes. I should have stood by you from the beginning. I should have told my family to respect us, to respect you, but I was afraid. Afraid of what they would think, afraid of losing their approval, and I'm sorry." Lily looked at him, her eyes softening as she listened. This was the moment she had been waiting for, Ryan finally taking responsibility for his actions. "I know you're sorry, Ryan," she said quietly. "But more than that, I know that you're trying, and that's all I've ever needed from you." She took a deep breath. "I've spent so much time being angry, trying to change everything that happened. But I can't change the past. I can't undo the way things were. What I can do, though, is move forward. I can choose how I deal with it all. And I choose to let go of the anger. For me." Ryan's eyes filled with admiration. He had seen Lily struggle, had watched her wrestle with the ghosts of their past, and he knew how hard it was to let go of that kind of pain. "You're incredible, you know that," he whispered. "I don't think I could do what you're doing." The couple continued to attend therapy together, working through their issues and learning how to communicate more effectively. Ryan began setting clearer boundaries with his family, refusing to let their influence overrule his decisions. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments when he faltered, when he doubted himself. But every time he saw the strength in Lily's eyes, he felt more determined to be the man she needed him to be. They were building something new, something stronger than before. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their villa, enjoying the calm of the night, Lily turned to Ryan. "You know, when we first met, I had no idea how much I would learn about myself, about you, about us." Ryan smiled softly, taking her hand. "I didn't either, but I'm glad we're figuring it out together." Lily looked out at the stars, her mind reflecting on everything they had been through. "I used to think that love meant sacrificing everything for the other person, that it meant pleasing everyone around me. But now, I know it's about balance, about respecting each other's boundaries, about being true to ourselves, and about making sure we never lose ourselves in the process." Ryan squeezed her hand. "And about making sure we're there for each other, even when it's hard." Lily nodded. "Yes, exactly." The healing process, though long and difficult, had taught them both invaluable lessons. For Lily, it had been about finding her own voice, setting boundaries, and learning to forgive, not only Ryan and his family, but herself. For Ryan, it was about realizing that love wasn't about control or expectations. It was about standing up for what was right and respecting the woman he loved. Together, they were stronger. Together, they had faced their fears, confronted the past, and had chosen to move forward with love, understanding, and respect. There would be challenges ahead, but now they knew that no matter what came their way, they would face it as partners, side by side. The power of love and boundaries. The last few months had been a whirlwind for Lily and Ryan after the tumultuous events that had nearly torn them apart. They were now embarking on a new journey, one where love and respect were not only words but the very foundation of their relationship. It wasn't a perfect road, and it would never be, but it was theirs to walk together, with the lessons they had learned serving as a map. Lily sat by the window of their newly renovated home, the soft golden light of early morning filling the room. She watched the sunlight filter through the trees outside, casting long shadows that gradually shortened as the day began. It was a peaceful moment, one she had longed for but never thought she'd have. The world felt right, balanced, and she couldn't help but smile. It had been a long time since she'd felt this kind of calm. Ryan entered the room, his footsteps quiet on the wooden floor. He had been working on the garden outside, trying to finish planting a few flowers that Lily had picked out. "You okay?" he asked, his voice warm with concern. Lily turned to him and nodded, her heart full. "I'm more than okay," she said softly. "I'm finally at peace." Ryan smiled, walking over and sitting beside her. "I think we both are," he agreed. "It feels different now, doesn't it? Like we're really starting over, together." They had spent so many years trying to live up to the expectations of others, trying to please family, friends, and society. But in doing so, they had lost sight of who they were. The past had taught them that love didn't thrive in the shadows of obligation. It thrived in honesty, trust, and most importantly, It was a lesson they had both struggled to understand, but now it felt like second nature. Over the past few months, they had worked hard to rebuild their relationship, not just with each other, but with Ryan's family. They had met, talked, and begun the slow process of mending their fractured connections. But this time things were different. Lily and Ryan had drawn clear boundaries. They had explained firmly but gently that their relationship came first, and no one, not even family, could cross the line. It wasn't easy, especially when old habits were so deeply ingrained, but they were both committed to making it work. Ryan had finally found his voice, standing up to his parents and telling them, in no uncertain terms, that while he loved them, his loyalty lay with Lily. His mother, Karen, had taken some time to accept the new dynamics, but she slowly came to realize that Ryan was no longer the son she could control. It was hard for her, but in time, she began to respect the space they needed as a couple. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Ryan turned to Lily with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said, "I've been thinking about how far we've come. A year ago, I would have never imagined we'd be here. I thought we would always be stuck in the middle, between my family and you, but we've built something stronger than I thought possible." Lily smiled, a little sadness flickering in her eyes. "It's been hard, I won't lie, but I'm so proud of us. And I think we're finally getting it right. We're not just making our marriage work. We're building a life that's truly ours, with no strings attached to anyone else's expectations." Ryan took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "And we'll keep doing that. For us. For this." The following months saw more changes. Lily began to flourish in her career, no longer held back by the weight of her insecurities. She had spent so much time trying to please everyone, but now she knew that the only person she needed to please was herself. Her confidence grew with each new project she took on. And Ryan, too, began to find fulfillment in his work now that the constant pressure from his family was gone. They were both carving out their own identities, not as extensions of their families, but as two independent, strong individuals who had found each other. They also decided to visit Lily's parents for the first time in months. It had been an emotional decision, but one that needed to happen. Sophia had always been supportive of Lily, but Lily knew that her mother had a hard time understanding the decisions she had made, especially when it came to standing up to Ryan's family. This visit was their way of showing Sophia that they were okay, that they had learned to set boundaries, and that they were living on their own terms. The visit was filled with conversation, laughter, and a few tears. Sophia had initially struggled with seeing her daughter so distant from her family, but over time, she had come to understand that Lily's happiness didn't need to mirror anyone else's expectations. They had a long talk about love, respect, and the importance of living authentically, and by the end of the day, Sophia gave them both her blessing, proud of the way they had handled their struggles. One afternoon, as Lily and Ryan sat in their garden enjoying the quiet of their little sanctuary, Lily looked over at him with a contented smile. "This is what we've worked for, Ryan," she said softly. "This is our life, our choices, and I couldn't ask for anything more." Ryan smiled, his eyes warm and full of love. "I know. We did it. Together." And with that, they sat in silence, the weight of everything they had overcome lifting off their shoulders, leaving only the peace they had created.